Now, it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big one of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. But visit FanDuel.com/UCSS and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We have talked a bunch over the last couple of weeks on the Cavs roster future, whether or not they can keep the core four together, whether or not they have to separate it. And Jason, an article that you co-authored in The Athletic in the immediate aftermath of the season, mentioned that Darius Garland may request a trade, or his representation may request a trade if Donovan resigns so he can become a primary ball handler. My question today is, do the Cavs have to trade Darius Garland, or can they run it back with the two guards, Donovan and Darius, next season if that's the decision they choose to go in?
I feel like we've asked the same question 13 different times in the last 16 days.
We have not asked this one
We
yet.
have not asked this specific question? Okay.
I mean, do they have to trade him?
Do they have to?
No, they don't have to trade him at all. I mean, they've had some success with those two on the court together. Problem is, this past year, it was just so different looking that's where everybody's mind is. But you can't take away from the fact that at a point in time, Jason always likes to point out that Darius plays some really good ball next to Donovan. So it could work. They just got to figure it out. Like I said, I don't know what happened to Darius this year, and I still want to know what happened in his personal life, because he was very affected and just looked totally different. I think that both of those guys could flourish with each other, but I think it's one of those things that as fans and people that watch, we're just getting tired of it. You know, it's so much of the traditionalist NBA person will tell you can't win with two small guards. And when you go out there and see us losing games, you'll say to yourself, maybe they're right. But there is also stories where that's not the case. They did go on to win a championship. So I think they have to make their mind up of who they're going to be. I think both of them have developed in some way from being around each other. I think Donovan is still trying to instill that killer instinct into Darius. You're seeing the struggle with the shooting of Darius against the Magic, and then obviously he ended up hitting the shot, and Donovan ended up embracing him and those things. So you know that the love is there. I think it could work, but I think that it might be best for both of their careers if they did go their separate ways, because I do think in a way Donovan has stunted Darius's growth a little bit.
They don't have to trade him.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, no, they don't have to. And this could be an interesting summer because Rich Paul is one of the most powerful agents in the NBA. And if the Cavs want to tell him no, it'll be interesting to see how this goes. Because, and I think, I was going to write about this hopefully next week. I think part of this may also, there's a lot of layers to this. And I think you have to go back to 2018. And they were presented with a trade demand from Kyrie Irving. And they acquiesced and they traded him. And I hated that trade at the time. I thought it was a terrible trade at the time. I thought it was, for the last 6 years, I thought it was a terrible trade. I thought that trade cost them an opportunity to win a championship. I absolutely, positively believe the Cavs could have won another title and beat the Warriors in 2018 had they had Kyrie on that team. And I know that's outrageous because they were swept by Golden State. But I talked to guys in the locker room who felt like we are one piece away. The Warriors are not the Warriors that they were before. This is a fragile team. If we could just put enough pressure on them, we could break them. And they just didn't have the pieces to do it because of that trade.
Do you also think there's a possibility, and we've probably talked about this, but I don't remember at this point, if Kyrie had stayed and things were better, is there a chance that LeBron would have stayed, or was he going to LA no matter what?
He was leaving.
That was it. Okay.
So
it was just about the 1 year.
Yeah, and that's the point I kept making is you could still trade Kyrie with a year left.
Right.
Are you going to get as much for him? No, but you have another
So what? You didn't
championship.
get anything for him anyway.
You could win another championship.
Yeah.
So and we don't need to relitigate the whole thing, but I do think that there's a lesson learned from that of hey, we've got a really good thing here now. We don't necessarily have to break this up. This is a talented team, and know they did, like Darius had a bad year last year, which also complicates his trade value. And we've talked about it. I've kind of poked around the league. Who's got better trade value? And overwhelmingly, the answer was Jarrett Allen had better trade value than Darius Garland. So you're entering a time in the NBA now where the league is really trying to disband the super teams. And we've seen it with the collective bargaining agreement. And I've talked to teams who said it's going to be really interesting to see how trades look going forward, because this is not the landscape is changing. Rookie contracts have never been more valuable than they are right now. You can't, like, the second apron is real. There's basically a hard cap in the NBA. So it's really going to impact the value of guys. So Darius is coming off a down year. If the Cavs have the option of trading him for pennies on the dollar or keeping him, they very well may keep him. And they're, by the way, they're telling teams right now, we are not trading Darius.
Yeah.
Now, how much of that is positioning and showing leverage? Posturing, thank you. And how much of that is real? I do think there's a level of realistic, because I think we talked on the show. I was talking to people in the organization before Game 7 Orlando that said, we are not blowing this up. We are running this back. This is a good team. Even if we don't get out of this first round, we are not giving up on this yet. And then obviously, our report came out. Yeah. The stuff with Jarrett happened, and I kind of stood back and said, I don't know if you can bring this back or not.
Right.
But the Cavs are not forced to trade Darius by any means. They could tell him no.
Obviously, they don't have to trade him. That seems like the pretty obvious answer. I think within this, you said something that I find fascinating, that maybe the years of this stretch of whatever many years it's been of super teams is going the opposite direction.
It is.
From my perspective, that would be a good thing for basketball. Now, the things that I dislike about the NBA, I think young people don't care about. This is I got no facts to back this up, but I would confidently say that fans of the NBA by a much larger percentage over football, basketball, baseball, and even hockey, people root for players more than teams.
Yes.
Right? Like,
that's
it's a
a
much
fact.
higher percentage.
Yes.
And the reason for that is because it's the players, unlike even quarterbacks in the NFL, don't have close to the power that the NBA star has. The NBA star can almost just do whatever he wants. And for a fan, if you're a fan of a team that's not in a sexy market, and as much as we all love Cleveland, I think we realize that to most NBA players, Cleveland is not a sexy market, unfortunately.
Yes.
They don't have good taste. We know the great things about Cleveland, and they don't appreciate those things. I mean that. I'm not being sarcastic.
It's a great place to raise a family. If you're young, single, in your early 20s,
I get it if you want to go somewhere else. Okay. And if you're a fan of the Cavs or the Milwaukee Bucks or the Orlando Magic, yeah, like every time you have a really good player, you're always worried that player wants to leave. In Major League Baseball, in the NFL, with rare exceptions, hockey too, I know enough about hockey to know this, that players almost never are able to force their way out of a team. And ultimately, for the most part, in baseball and in the NFL, if you're willing to pay that player, like most players for the Guardians, if the Guardians are willing to pay them, they'll stay in Cleveland, with very rare exceptions. Now, the Guardians haven't been willing to pay most guys, but in theory, if Dolan spent like Jimmy did, he could probably keep most. Jim Thome would have stayed here if the Indians would have paid him the most.
Different time.
Different time. But I still think most of the stars in baseball will stay in their teams if the teams are willing to pay. Not all, but the most. Whereas the NBA, even if they sign, it really doesn't matter. Yeah. Because ultimately, if a superstar wants to be traded, he's eventually going to be traded. It may not be definitely the team he wants. It may not be exactly what he wants, but eventually it almost always happens. And so for fans, it's like, well, this sucks, Like, we have Donovan Mitchell. We should be excited. The conversation shouldn't be, is Donovan going to sign or not? It should be, how do we make the best team around Donovan?
Yeah.
But until he signs, and even if he does, yeah, they're going to try to build the best team around him. But by next year, he could say, you know what? I'm not happy here. You got to trade me. And eventually they will.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Yeah. I mean, signing him doesn't guarantee the next 5 years.
Right.
It guarantees another 1 or 2.
Right.
And then you go from there.
Yeah, and that's frustrating. But ultimately,
Where's the loyalty? Where's the loyalty at?
Well, I don't think there's loyalty on either side.
No, there's no loyalty on either.
And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be.
And I'm not even saying this to say that the players owe something to the teams or the fans. They don't.
No, they don't.
But it's better for the fans if players stay with the teams. It's just better for the fans.
Sure.
It's not necessarily better for the players.
Obviously everybody knows I'm a huge Darius fan, even though Earl hates him. I'm a huge
Earl's
Darius.
a hater.
Yeah, Earl hates him.
He's in the bathroom, so he can't defend
Earl
himself right
can't
now.
stand the guy. I just don't, because I can see how the front office of a Cavs team could look at this and be like, what if we got one small forward, one wing, just one right wing piece.
Or they just blame JB for this whole thing.
Whatever. What if they literally are just one piece away? Like, and then you decided and you traded everything and never figured that out.
But how would you get that piece?
See, that's the problem right there. But it's like, because I feel like they're all good, but for some odd reason they aren't good together, and that's the part that doesn't make sense. Like, and that's why I think JB is getting the blame, because it's like, dude, you got 4 pieces here that should be good NBA players that's very productive, but you can't make it work together? Like, what sense does that make? So I think that's why people look at him and be like, all right, it's got to be JB. So if that's the case, say a front office thought like that, then they could make the excuse to be like, we could run it, we could get another coach here that could figure it out, and it could work. So that, to me, is how they could end up keeping all 4.
True. Or maybe not trade Darius, but just trade Jarrett Allen.
I have more faith in the backcourt figuring out than I do the front court. If you have to make a change, and it's wild to say this because Jarrett was their second best player most of the year, but that would be the guy that I would target. That's the guy that I would move.
So maybe you trade Jarrett for a wing player in some sort of a deal. I mean, is that's possible, right?
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah.
Well, Evan's series against the Celtics put a lot of people at ease with
I feel better about him after that series. Fair or not, I do feel better about him.
What are Cleveland fans clinging to more? Evan against the Celtics or Deshaun's second half against Baltimore?
Deshaun against Deshaun.